Gonna go. Oh, here we are. Here we are. And so here we are, everyone. God, when they say you're going live, we are going live. I mean, it's like, hey, the Agongs are ready. The Benny Agbayani jersey is ready. The mini Agongs are. We're here. Emil Guillermo. Emil, I'm up to you. Hi, everyone. God, it's good to be here with you. This is my Emil Amok pop-up. We do it at the museum. The FANHS Museum, the Filipino American National Historical Society Museum, once again is closed. Oh my God, that COVID. You know, it's stranger, right? I mean, it's mutating, and we got to get shots in the arms, but we're still, at that place where we can't open up. So we're biding our time, and I hope that you're tuning in wherever you're watching this on Facebook Live. We're on live on Facebook now. We also are on Emil Guillermo Media Live right now on Facebook. You can watch the replays. Okay, that's not an excuse for all of you to say, "Oh, I can leave now." No, no, stay. Because we got a guest. We got a special guest who's not Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez. Oh, we talked to Daniel Phil Gonzalez, our good friend, about the current history and context in our previous videos. We did that on Thursday after the inaugural. So, tune into that one or click on that one. That's on our Facebook Live site at FANHS Museum, FANHS Museum. Also on amok.com. Oh, so many places you can get us. We're like Patisse. We're everywhere. He's like, oh my God. No, you can get us everywhere in our almost everywhere. YouTube, in our recorded form, but live here we are. Once again, it's been quite a week. I mean, well, first of all, we're closed, right? And this is a way of opening up the doors of saying, here we are, we're doing our thing. We are experiencing Filipino American history live and in the moment right here. And really, thank you for being with us. We do this on Saturday and Sunday when the museum is ordinarily open. Well, yeah, we're closed physically, but like the spirit, we are open. We open up the doors and say, here's your Filipino American history wherever you are. You don't have to drive to Stockton. So there, for some people, that's a benefit. For some people, they say, oh, I don't have to drive to see where the museum. No, you don't. You can experience it right here. We're going to talk about Filipino American history because, as I like to say, the museum is where you are, whether you're in Washington State, Washington, D.C., Florida, Texas, Michigan, Chicago, San Francisco. You should drive to Stockton. That's not that far. That's an historic drive to Stockton if you're in San Francisco or Delano or anywhere. Anyway, I'm in the county, so I'm not technically inside. I'm in my Benny Agbayani closet. Let me mention Benny. You know, if you're a baseball fan, and Filipinos are baseball fans. Hank Aaron died. If you're a Giants fan and a Willie Mays fan, then Hank Aaron and Willie, they were kind of like, oh, who's gonna get there? God, Willie would have gotten there if he didn't go to the Army. Hank got there first with the home runs. They were they were buddies, I would imagine. They were twin icons, but different people. Still, we honor Hammering Hank because he was the home run king. And Benny's jersey has been up here, but the reason why Benny Agbayani, number 50, the Hawaiian Punch, number 50 for the New York Mets, the reason why his jersey's up there is because he is our Filipino home run hitter. I mean, name another one who's had more uh, consequential home runs. I mean, I can't think of one who has any Filipino blood. And Benny's Agbayani, it's hero, means hero. That's why his jersey's up here with me in my closet. Filipino in the closet. Anyway, yeah. Hank Aaron's death was a big deal, but he played for the Milwaukee Braves before they moved to Atlanta. And I kept telling my wife, I said, yeah, he was a great player. He broke the record. But Willie Mays hit his 4 home runs in Milwaukee when he had that 4 home run game. That was in Milwaukee, and he stood up to Hank Aaron. We honor Aaron, but I couldn't help but think of Mays, and I couldn't help but think that, boy, when you grew up in San Francisco in the Bay Area, Willie Mays, and I imagine to a lot of Filipinos, because they were in California, they were in San Francisco, or even if you were a Dodger fan in LA, Willie Mays, he was something, right? He meant a little more to me. And I hope that he has I hope he's healthy. I haven't seen him for, well, since I hung out at the ball games, like 2016 was the last year that I really was a serious Giants fan. But anyway, just a reminder of the baseball greats. All right, so this is our museum pop-up. As I said, Dan Gonzalez, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, was talking about the inaugural. Check that on our video, in our video library. But we have a special guest, and if you saw the inaugural, it was all about Biden, the old guy, and there's Harris. And let's not give short shrift to Harris. She represents something to all Asian Americans, South Asians, Filipino Americans, or Asian Americans of Filipino descent. She represents that possibility. She was the great hope. So between Biden and Harris, and there was one other person on that tiered platform, Amanda Gorman. Amanda, and I wear my Harvard hat today, sort of camo, but I wear it in the back because this is the way young people wear their hats, right? And Amanda Gorman, a Harvard graduate from LA, the National Youth Poet Laureate, she really stole the show because she was talking about all the things that were happening within the last month: insurrection, democracy, and turmoil. And here's the new day. There's light, right? If we're brave, be the light, or there's light if you're brave enough to be it. Look at my column at aldef.org/blog. Well, let me just go to it right quick because, hold on a second. Just because it does say where we are here. Let's see. Let's go to the blog, aldef.org/blog. And if you go to it, there's Kamala Harris. I called it the inaugural light and magic of Biden, Harris, and Gorman, right? And there's a Harris, but Gorman, my God, the poem, it was kind of prosy. Some traditional poets didn't like it for that reason, but she said, and here's what I mean, the last sentence is really something. It says, where they come as we are, step out of the shade of flame, and unafraid the new dawn balloons as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Which I thought was kind of like it was that mic drop moment, because this is the most diverse, well, I guess it's right up there, one of the most diverse administrations we've had in America since this demographic shift. I don't know of any Filipinos yet. Maybe, cross our fingers. Some Asian Americans, certainly. But this idea that this was an all-inclusive embrace of the country we become, as opposed to the last 4 years where it's been almost like, and we saw it with the January 6th insurrection, It was like a riot against diversity. It was all the people said, no, we are the aggrieved white population and we want to. All right, I know it wasn't all white, but it was basically a group of anti-diversity, white supremacists all out there. And this new administration makes it like night and day. Here's the day. Here's the light. And here's Amanda Gorman saying, it's here. There is always light. She says, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it, which means you need to have a certain amount of courage. And where's the courage coming from? But from the youth, from the youth. And that's my cue to introduce our new guest, our guest for today. She is not just a member of the Filipino American National Historical Society of LA. She is an officer. She is the vice president. Let me introduce Isabelle David. Isabelle? Isabelle.
Hello.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for just sitting and listening while I tried to set up the fact that I don't know if you write poetry, but you represent the youth that Amanda Gorman put on display at the inaugural. And I thank you for coming on here because I think you're the first one that I've talked to on this program who is not on Medicare. So I applaud you for that.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, look, here's the thing that got me. Not only are you a member of FANHS, the Filipino American National Historical Society LA chapter, you are the vice president. And I'm not talking about you're sitting on the kids' table or you're off on the side of you're a member of the junior FANHS. No, you are the big FANHS. And you are all of how old now?
I'm 20 years old.
You're 20. See, you're 2 years younger than Amanda Gorman. You represent Amanda, and Amanda Gorman's from LA, just like you, right?
Yep. I saw that.
Yeah, and she was the poet and the youth poet laureate of LA. She goes to Harvard. She's the national youth laureate, and I have seen her, and a friend of mine's a poet, and I said, "Oh, this guy should be the diversity poet," and he's in his 80s. And then when Amanda Gorman came out there on Wednesday, I said, "No, she's the one. She's the one." Just like
yes.
I see you willing to be vice president. Here's the thing about being vice president. You didn't go president. You went being vice president. Being vice president means you don't care about the title and you're willing to do the work.
Yeah.
I applaud you. I applaud
you. Thank you.
So, what do you say to the old people who are in the FANHS chapter in LA? Do you boss them around as vice president?
No, I'm learning from everyone, older and younger than me. So I'm just learning by example and trying to lead by their example.
No, that's good. And so here's the question. Why? You're a young person. You're 20. Most young people, you're born here or an immigrant?
I'm born here. I'm like third generation.
All right. Third generation. My father's the immigrant or the American national. I'm first generation American born like you. So we are the same, only a few years apart, but we are the same. How do you see yourself as an American born Filipino, different from the immigrants? And how do you see your Filipino-ness?
So again, like I'm third generation. When I was in high school, middle school, I was not feeling like I was Filipino because at the school I went to, there wasn't a lot of Filipinos, like my elementary school. But once I got into my middle school, high school, I met a lot more people that were like me from the district because as you go into higher grades, like all the students just seem to condense together into bigger schools.
It's more like hollow. Yeah.
Exactly. We started to mix up. So my parents, they don't speak Tagalog at home. So I was already feeling different from some of the Filipinos at my school. And it wasn't until I got into college where I realized I'm Filipino American, and there's so much for me to learn about, not just about like Filipino folk dancing and what happened at the mainland in the Philippines, but what's happening here in America as a Filipino American. So that's actually how I got into FANHS. I was just interested in learning more about my Filipino American history and identity.
See, this is the thing. I am old enough to be your, people call people, older people, uncle, right? I'm
Yes.
old enough to be your father, right? And this is the thing. When you're born here, right? The people who are born here, I had the people who were immigrants to look up to, and they were fighting their fight. They weren't fighting my fight, right?
Mhm.
And that meant my generation was fighting a different fight for American Filipinos, but we haven't expanded as much because the fight has really been at the immigrant level. And so
Yes.
what we leave to younger American born Filipinos like yourself is like, oh, where are we? And your parents are born here, right?
Yes, they were born here.
And so they are like me. They have moved up into the American middle class. That was the great thing. Everyone moved into the American middle class as they immigrated from the Philippines, post 65, but they were born here, and they took the jump up from your grandparents, right?
Yes.
They were the
Mhm.
originals, right? Where
They
did they
started our Filipino American life here. Yeah.
right, the Filipino American journey, where did they come from? Your
So on my dad's side, well, from the Philippines, he's from Pangasinan,
oh,
and then they moved here to Port Hueneme, Oxnard area. So that's where my dad grew up. And on my mom's side, they're from Cebu, and then they moved to Long Beach. So I have like both in Southern California.
Pangasinan and Cebuano, right? You're
Mhm.
like I was Ilocano and Tagalog. I like to say so. We're both kind of mestizo Filipinos,
Yes.
right? We're both mixed, and we couldn't speak each other's dialects, right? So
Mhm.
English,
English, yep. The common language, it seems.
a common language in the Philippines, right?
Mhm.
And so this is funny because as I'm looking at when I look at you, I look at myself like 20, 30 years later, but you have now you're looking ahead and you see a bigger Filipino community than I saw, certainly,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
you want to know about American Filipinos. What have you do? What didn't you learn any of that in school? Did you find it in school?
No, so like I said, in my high school, that's when I first started getting and meeting more Filipino Americans in my community because my elementary school wasn't that diverse. So at that time, I joined the Filipino club, and we were more focused into doing Filipino cultural dances. So we had our Filipino cultural night, which is lots of fun and everything. Like as you see with your gongs that you have,
Yeah,
we would
and
dance to those.
the people do that. They get out the sticks for tinikling.
Yes, and the sticks for tinikling. So we were more focused on that. Even when I went into college, I was doing more of the Filipino cultural night dancing. But I think it was October 2019 was when I first met Dr. Ronald Buenaventura, and
Ah,
he told me about FANHS, and I was like, wow, there's more to just Filipino dancing and more to the gongs, more to the tinikling sticks. There's history that I need to learn, like being a Filipino American, not just what's happening through dancing in the
so
Philippines.
so you entered through traditionally this is the way it is through
Mm-hmm.
food, through uh, dance, right? You
Mm-hmm.
hold it, you do the Filipino candle dance, which
Yes, I did that.
modern
Pandango.
yeah, modern Filipinos use iPhones instead of candles. But no, but and you got a sense of it, but
Mm-hmm.
you had to know that there was more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
I did. I knew there was more, but I just didn't know how to get there. So it was really a nice like introduction to have to meet Dr. Ronald Bonaventura, because he was telling me all about FANHS. He was telling me about what was established through FANHS, like October, Filipino American History Month is through FANHS. I had no idea. I was like, I just knew it was a thing. I didn't know where it came from. And just learning more, just like little by little, learning different things. I was like, okay, I want to be involved. I want to learn more. I want to be in this community.
What was the first thing you learned that said, "Oh, that's like a light bulb moment for you"? What was it?
So, okay, it was October 2019, and my family was actually invited to a dinner with Johnny Itliong, who is the son of Larry Itliong.
Right.
And that was actually the start of me learning about Filipino American history. Just hearing like Johnny talk about his dad and what he did alongside Cesar Chavez. Because, you know, growing up elementary school, middle school, you only learn about Cesar Chavez. You didn't learn about Larry Itliong and what he did alongside to help that movement. So that was the first thing that sparked. And then I was like, okay, let's keep on learning.
Wow. All right. Little Larry Itliong trivia. How many fingers did he have?
Oh, I'm
That
guessing
could
it's
be
not
on
10.
Jeopardy. It could be on Jeopardy. It also could be in the Filipino SAT. So how many fingers?
Oh my gosh. Does he
All right.
have 9?
Da-da-na-na-na.
9, 8, 7?
Yay!
Oh my
He had
gosh.
7 finger Larry Itliong. Now, don't tell me
Wow.
which digits, but now this is a point that not just you, but everyone else who's listening to this can say, "Oh, you tell me, I'm going to stump him for the Larry Itliong finger question." You know, so you get up to the bar when you can go to the bar safely. You
Mhm.
can ask him that. But here's the other thing: at the inaugural, when you saw that President Joe Biden has a bust of Cesar Chavez. Did you see that?
I did. I saw the pictures and all his new pictures in the background. I did see the bus though. Yeah.
Well, it didn't. Well, shouldn't your first thought be, wait a
Where's
minute?
Cesar? Yeah, Cesar Chavez. You're missing Larry Itliong. He should be right
Yeah,
next to him.
at least put a cigar in Chavez's mouth or something. You know,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it's like, okay, so I guess they're not talking about the strike; they're just talking about the general Chavez aura,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
fine. But you know, Larry should be lurking in the Oval Office also,
Exactly.
because
Mhm.
he made or opened the door for Chavez to go through and make history. So, well, that's interesting that you would say all that. And once again, in high school, when you opened up an American history book, or in college, did you
Mhm.
see any of this?
I didn't learn Filipino American history, but I did learn about like the United States taking over the Philippines. So to that extent is what I learned about the Philippines. Just that we were taken control of by the United States. There was wars, but other than that, nothing of us actually being here in
No.
America, Filipino American history.
See, and that's the important part, and that's one of the things. Dr. Ronald Bonaventura, he is a trustee of the museum, stalwart FANHS member as well, but a trustee of the museum, a teacher, and he, the fact that he connected you to us, show, and that you are now the vice president of the FANHS chapter in LA, and that's a great thing. But let me just say something about that history that you mentioned. You know, everything in the history books generally is about what the U.S. did to the Philippines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it
Exactly.
almost it ignores what happens when the Filipinos came to America from 1904,
Mm-hmm.
1905, how they went to college, how they went to work, how they came here in the 20s, sometimes through Hawaii first, but sometimes just directly. But here, the inauguration of the Filipino Republic on January 23rd, the first constitutional democracy in Asia, 1899. They're talking about the inauguration of, I believe, that is the Emilio Aguinaldo Republic, the Malolos
Mm-hmm.
Republic. Notice that Emilio Aguinaldo gets mentioned, You've heard his name, right, in the history
Yeah.
books. And it's because he's the Filipino general that the Americans kind of had under control when they began colonization. But now, how about this? This is an example of Filipino American history as we speak. I mentioned this on our Facebook page. January 22nd, Fermin Tobera was killed in that anti-Filipino riot in Watsonville, 1930, January 22nd. He was shot after a night of dancing at the Taxi dance hall in Watsonville, California. What did your history books say about Fermin Tabera?
Nothing. My first time hearing about that was actually through Dr. Ronald Bonaventura. He was telling us about it. I was like, wow, this was nowhere in our history books. I didn't know this happened. It's crazy how there's just so much history that's not covered in our textbooks. There's just so much more to learn about.
So one of the things about our history is that it's such a thing that, it's there, but no one chooses to put a spotlight on it. No one chooses to look at it unless you're an engaged Filipino American like yourself, or someone who has an interest in, that kind of niche in history. What would you like to see at a Filipino American National Historical Society museum? I mean, you're down in LA, you're 20, you got, the weekends. Oh, I want to drive up to Stockton to see the FANHS Museum. What would make you want to come up there? What would you like to see?
I've never been to the museum, so I think already in itself, I would love to just check out the museum and see what's there. But if there was workshops just teaching more about the history or something that was relating to that month. So you said yesterday, January 22nd, if we had someone talk about what had happened with him, then that would be like, because it's relevant to that month. Like, this happened this many years ago, and this is what we should learn about it, and this is why we should learn about it.
Yeah.
So just having like maybe monthly or maybe every other month be specific history towards what happened how many years ago. That would be so cool to learn about.
Well, have you caught any of our pop-ups? We talk about modern history. We talk about things that are happening from a Filipino American lens. I mean, we try to do that. We try to read from Professor Don Mabalan's book. Do you have a copy of Little Manila's in the Heart?
No, I actually don't right now. Well, I know I should get a copy.
You should get a copy. You can go on the FANHS Museum, and anyone out there, you can go to the FANHS Museum website and order a copy. We get a little something from that sale, or wherever you get it. I mean, I'm not trying to put any pressure on anyone to subsidize the museum. However, we are an all volunteer organization, and I have it right here. Let's see. Here it is. See, I've got Don's book right here, Little Manila's in the Heart. It really is like a kind of, I don't want to say it's the Bible, but excuse me, you can go to it, and you see how since 1900, if we take 1900 as a starting point, you see where we are. We have less than 121 years to deal with, right? I mean, if you were a historian and who was a Middle Ages scholar, that's a lot of time you got to cover, But Filipino American history, you can do the timeline, and that's something we're working on in really letting people know the timeline, so they know how Filipino American history begins with the colonization, and how it extends with our migration to America, and it extends through our discrimination in America, and how in 1965 we were able to how can there be, did you know how that there were quotas on Filipino Americans?
Whoa,
to come to America? Well, when did your grandparents come here?
Oh, when did my grandparents come here? I don't know, but I think around the 70s, I'd say, because they came through the Navy. So they served in the Navy. Yeah.
But they came after 65, right?
Yes, after 65.
Okay, so this is the thing. We, just in our little thing here, represent really the major shifts of Filipinos to America. My father first came in the 20s. He's part of that, from 1900 to 1930, the Filipinos coming over
Mhm.
here, because in 1934 they excluded Filipinos, and from 1934 on to 1965, there were, just there were these quotas. I think less than 100 people were allowed in to America.
Wow.
So you
Mhm.
didn't have much of a Filipino population, except for
At that
the
time.
yeah, except for the
Yeah.
40,000 who were able to come by 1930,
Mhm.
and then that was considered too much, and then they excluded them in 1934, and then just a trickle, right? So the Filipino
Mhm.
population, maintained a sense of, well, it leveled off. There was a little bump after World War II, 50s, where
Mhm.
Filipinos who served in the war were able to bring back war brides.
Yeah.
But the real explosion happened in 1965 when more Filipinos were allowed in. And so
Mhm.
it sounds like, from what you're telling me, the military played a role in your families coming here. Plus,
Mhm.
after 65, more people were able to come over here. And that's where you come in. You represent the baby boom post 65. I represent the baby boom after World War II. And you can see just in us the timeline of Filipino American history. It's, history doesn't have to be go do go do your research and get your footnotes. It
Mhm.
really is telling your story, and just telling me about your Lolo and your father and your mother and where you are in California tells me a lot about your
Mhm.
history. And committing an act of history, speaking the story out loud, is as simple as that. So tell me, as a FANHS vice president, what are you doing to spread the word and the story of Filipino Americans?
Mhm. So right now, again, we're trying to get some more youth into our chapter, just in FANHS in general. So we have about 10 youth members in our FANHS LA chapter. And right now, I'm kind of serving as a mentor to them. I'm helping with them with college applications, like resume, stuff like that, and just trying to help them grow and give them the resources, um, giving them my resources to help them grow as an individual and learn more about their Filipino American identity. So we had some workshops last year, growing up brown, and we had a professor, I forgot her name, but she's from Cal State Long Beach, and she talked about her growing up brown experiences, which is like kind of what we're doing right now, talking about our experiences.
Right.
So that was good for them to learn about. And we're actually planning some more stuff for this year. So just putting in a lot of work to let other people learn about Filipino American history.
Do you find that the people that you talk to, the young people, they're probably sons and daughters of immigrants, or are they immigrants themselves?
They're sons and daughters of immigrants. Most of them are younger than me. So a lot of their parents moved here. Yeah,
How about any
immigrated here.
any who came here as young kids, from the Philippines, born in the Philippines, and then come? Because I have some relatives who, even though they applied for immigration post 65, they, while waiting in line, and it still took about 10, 15, 20 years to get through
Mhm.
the immigration lines. By the time they came, my aunt, my cousin, and his wife, they started out just a couple. They ended up with like 3 or 4 kids born there who came here, and
Mhm.
now those kids are American. Do you have those kind of that kind of story in your mix?
Not right now, but I'm hoping that with the work we're doing to have more like events and workshops through Fonzele, we can attract like a more diverse type of youth. Some that are immigrated here, some that were born here, so we can learn more about each other's histories.
What do you find when you meet people who have immigrated here as young people, and you're a Filipino American? Do you find that you have? I mean, there's common ground, but is
Mhm.
there some initial suspicion or standoffishness, or do you just recognize them immediately? Oh, you're Filipino.
I'm usually good at recognizing. other Filipinos, but it's just more of like how they grew up in their household. Because sometimes their parents spoke Tagalog to them, and they are more aware of that. Whereas for me, like I don't know Tagalog. My parents don't speak it. I only hear it when I visit my grandparents. But like there are differences, but we're able to find a common ground, and we both know that we're Filipino, we're Filipino American, and we have different stories.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about our community. We are diverse in our stories, but we basically are Filipino, and we can have conversations and have differences of opinion, but we're still eating the same pinakbet and the same pancit and the same lumpia. Hopefully
Mm-hmm.
vegan. Do you know very many vegan Filipinos?
I know a few people that are trying to be vegan, so it's very interesting to see how they would adapt the recipe to fit the vegan
Yeah.
eating diet. Yeah.
Well, if they've gone as far as adapting recipes, that's a plus. They're further along the way. I call
Mm-hmm.
myself Father Vegan. You can come and confess your vegan transgressions if you've fallen off the wagon. I
Mm-hmm.
because I know how important it is to make a stand and say I'm going to eat better. I'm going to eat less, if not no pork at all. If you're vegan, it's no pork.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try to eat better because do you know any Filipinos with diabetes or heart disease?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It runs in my family.
Yeah. See, why
Yeah.
is it that that's our common ground, right?
I know.
I mean, my family too.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to take a stand in terms of our diet. And I one of the things I'd like to do at the museum is to have little workshops to help people get to the point where they can maybe move toward veganism and eat less fat, eat less white flour, eat less white sugar, and find, like, if your friends are really moving toward finding ways to create Filipino vegan food. And there are places out there, you know that, right? Like
Yes.
there are the
Mm-hmm.
restaurants out there that can help you. That's a plus because that's kind of Filipino American too.
It
Right?
is. We're making our own adaptation to a traditional Filipino dish. I actually saw it on TikTok, the vegan pinakbet. Someone was
No.
showing how to make it. Mm-hmm.
I know. Pinakbet. I know. I love that. I love it. But you don't need the pork. You don't need the little bits of. You don't need the patis. You don't need it. Just the vegetables are great,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, tell me more about. Does anyone think it's weird that you wanted to have an interest in this, like your other Filipino American friends who aren't members yet, or uh, non-Filipino
Um,
friends?
I'd say in general, all my friends are very supportive of what I do. Um, I think they're just really happy that I was able to find somewhere to learn more about like our history because I can tell them about it also. So I think I'm losing connection. It's
Yeah,
getting a
yeah.
little.
And what Oh yeah, am I fuzzy? I'm sorry about that. This is
Okay,
one of the
it's
things
all
when
right.
you're so far away in southern you're so far away in Southern California. No, we're in the same state. I don't know. This is just my internet connection. I must get the Filipino plan. I don't know. So tell me when what that was quite a thing. I mean, Cerritos down there, Johnny Itleong's down there. Larry Itleong lived in LA for a while. I mean, that's a big uh, center for post Itleong kind of sell you know people are trying to do something down there more so than some other areas. In the Bay Area, I think they have a school in Fremont. Is there any movement that you know of to try to name a anything for Larry Itleong down there?
Um, no movements entirely, but during the month of October, there were a few parades just to honor Larry
Yeah.
Leong. I think there was one in Carson that I visited and walked through, and there were people there to celebrate Larry Leong. But in general, no big movements or like rallies for him.
Yeah, well, maybe that's something in time as more people understand the need to have these men who meant something not just to our community but to our country. I mean, uh, the big thing in Don Mabalan's book about Larry Itliong is that Larry Itliong was the person who knew that there was a merger between labor rights and civil rights. And remember,
Mhm.
the Delano strike happened in 1965. The civil rights movement, the Civil Rights Act, happened in 1964. And everything was seen in these black and white terms. Were Filipino Americans covered by the Civil Rights Act? I mean, some people would say, yeah, it was
Mhm.
implied. But if you ask anyone out there if the Civil Rights Act really, applies to non-whites, they'll say, well, we know it in terms of black and white, but they
Mhm.
didn't, Filipino Americans aren't even on the radar yet. They don't know it. They
Exactly.
don't know us.
Yeah.
Are people surprised when they see you and they see your name, David? Do they, like, I'm Guillermo, right? So you're
Mhm.
David. Do they stop you and say, oh, you must be Spanish or Mexican or what?
Well, they actually pronounce my name as David. They don't think of David. So there's already like a difference in my name. They don't think I'm Filipino because they say David. So when they see me, they're like,
David. You could
oh,
be,
okay.
yeah, like Larry David on, the comedian on Curb Your Enthusiasm. So you have to say, look, don't, David, Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's David. Thank you. That's what
David,
you gotta
yes.
say. Yeah. And you do say you say it that way. I don't know. I just automatically said it that way. I should have asked you because a lot of people see my double L's and they'll say, "Oh, you must say Guillermo, not." No, I say the Filipino way, Guillermo. Anyway, all right. So tell me more about what more you'd like to see in a FANHS museum, a museum about Filipino American history, besides programs, which we try to do once a month. And also we do these things online. Um, you should tell me who you'd like to have me talk to. Tell me other people. But what are young people thinking about today? What do they need to know? Everything?
Honestly, everything. I just think there's so much history that isn't covered. So just anything is already like a step, or like anything that you can offer is already a step in a big direction for the youth and for everyone to come and learn about. But if you have like exhibits on certain artifacts, like that's cool. Like if you have a journal from someone, or if you have flyers and posters, like those are cool things to look at to see, like, oh, this is how things looked like in the past. This is how they wrote. This is what their experiences are. I think like that stuff would be really cool to look at.
Have you read through any of Carlos Bulasan's writings?
We actually, so also with Fonzele, we were able to get a few books, like Filipino American books that were written for us to read and exchange through. So we do have a few of the Carlos Bulusan's books, but I haven't been able to read through all of it yet. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. The thing is, we are still at the stage where people are talking about my father, who came in the 20s and who came,
Mhm.
the people who came from say 1905 to 1930. We still don't have a sense, or people don't have a sense of what happened to them. But Fermin Tabera, shot in 1930, anti-Filipino riots. Uh, it was because they didn't like Filipinos taking jobs or taking white women, taking
Mhm.
jobs from white men and white women from white men. White mobs went out to get the Filipinos. They shot up a bunkhouse and they got Fermin Tabera. I've written about that within the last week because of the January 6th insurrection in Washington. When you think of white mob, can you see the connection between the white mob that we saw there in Washington and what what happened to Fermin Tabera?
Yeah, I think it just seems like, well, as we saw, it just seems that they think they're a little bit better than us when really we're all
Uh,
the same people. We all live, we all are trying to go through life. So there's really no reason for that type of stuff to happen when we're just trying to live our lives and be here in America.
well, I didn't mean to get political there, but it's just the idea of a white mob getting angry was
Mm-hmm.
something that was, you know, we have seen the angry white mob, is my point, that Filipinos have been victimized by
Of
the
it,
angry
yeah.
white mob. And a lot of people don't see Filipinos as, oh, you guys have been discriminated against. What happened to you? Oh, well, let me tell you,
Hmm.
you know, this is Filipino American history. I mean, when people say that to me, I wonder, and now we're a couple generations removed, you know, how hard it must be for people like yourself, born here or of your age, to try to explain to people that Filipino American history happened and continues to happen because people don't recognize this.
Hmm. Exactly.
You know? I mean, do people that you talk to, do they say that do they feel that Filipinos are treated differently, or that things happen to them because they're Filipino and that wouldn't happen?
I think, like as we mentioned, they're just not aware of what we went through, what our history is. So they don't really think that we go through anything different or there's been anything discriminatory acts that has been against us. But there is. It's just not in the light. It's not seen. It's not talked about.
Yeah, in some ways, I was like that too when I grew up. I didn't really know Philippine. I saw Emilio Aguinaldo in the history books had one paragraph, right, about and they didn't even know to
Mm-hmm.
call it the Philippine American War or the American, it really, it was called the Philippine Insurrection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, oh, it's not the, let's call it the Philippine American War. They changed that. It only took them about almost 90 years to change it. And then
Wow.
even then, some people said, oh, wait a minute. It's the Philippine American War but the Americans started it. Shouldn't be the American Philippine War. Or, because the
Mm-hmm.
Americans started and they claimed they won it. They colonized the Philippines. But it's just another example of history that needs to be sorted out, researched. People need to know the basics, dive into it. But we're at the level where people don't even know it happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I mean, at basic stuff. Now, how about your parents? How much do they know? And did they help you? And did they tell you anything?
Not a lot either. So I think like a lot of my interest in learning about the Filipino stuff and Filipino American stuff was just through my school because of my Filipino clubs and because of meeting like Dr. Ronald Buenaventura. But my parents, I'd say that they didn't have access to that. Like the communities that they grew up with, there weren't that many Filipinos. Like
Really? Where
like
they
they were
grew
one
up?
of their own.
But
So
they,
my
what they,
dad grew up in Oxnard, so there
right.
wasn't too many. But he did find his friends in like that small Filipino community. And my mom, she grew up in Long Beach, which was diverse, but like
Yeah.
not too many Filipinos. Yeah.
So did she think the Filipinos came on the Queen Mary? No, just kidding. Look, look, I'm telling you, this was common. Like I said, when I picked up a history book, Philippine history had like one paragraph. It was all white history. It was not. It didn't seem relevant. What was relevant was what my mom and dad were going through. I looked at, was my
Mm-hmm.
mom and dad, they're okay? Oh, they're, and the culture and the history was, well, this is how we make adobo in our family, and this is how we make pancit. Never with
Mm-hmm.
the shredded cabbage. Don't put the cabbage in there. No bean sprouts. No, that's bad. That was our
Mm-hmm.
history. How we cook things. And what was your favorite Filipino food while we're on it?
My favorite is sinigang, especially when it's cold, rainy weather. I don't know if it's raining where you're at, but it's going to be raining this whole week. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, it never rains in Southern California, as the song goes. But you're gonna. Well, that's good. Sinigang is good. Now, how to make
Mm-hmm.
that vegan? If you left out the pork
Mm-hmm.
and just had
All the vegetables and the sour sweet.
yeah, the
That would be
vinegar.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do lemon, lemon and the vinegar. Yeah, I mean tamarind. You can use that. So
Mm-hmm.
and they say, "Oh, where's the baboy?" No, this is vegan. We'll make vegan synagogue. So, well, that it always comes back to the food because that was our introduction, and that's our comfort.
That is the introduction. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking that. You know, we should have our Babinka Bake sales, our Olympia sales, and all that. But because that was American I mean, I look back at my father and my mother, and my father was a cook. My mother stayed at home, took care of us, and she made. You know how you can get Filipino wrappers at the Philippine store, at the Asian store, at the Seafood City or whatever. My mom made wrappers by hand. Can you?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
gosh. That's hard.
Well, well, she had all day, but she made doilies and she made wrappers. And we're not
Mhm.
talking about, Little Wayne or Chance the Rapper. I'm talking about Olympia wrappers. She
Yeah,
made
we actually
Olympia
made
wrapper.
lumpia last night. My mom was making all the ingredients and we rolled them up. Lots
Yeah.
of fun. So we can cook it with our sinigang today.
See, that's the thing. That's what brings us together as family, right?
Mhm.
The food and the culture. But then you yearn for more. And I have to admit, I when I yearned for more, I found out more about colonization. It wasn't until really college for me. Senior
Mhm.
year, I took a class in Asian studies, not Asian American, Asian studies, and they expected me to learn about China and Japan, and I said I want to learn about Philippine
The Philippines. Mhm.
migration to America, and so I went into the libraries. I got the information. It was deep in the stacks. There were dissertations written by Filipino scholars who had come to America to study all this. And it was published in the Philippines. It was a dissertation at the school where I was. And that's what I used in my research paper. But I had no idea because you go to a bookstore. Remember when we had bookstores? we
Oh, yeah. Barnes and Nobles, Borders.
Yeah,
I miss
yeah.
those.
I miss those. But back then, if you went to a bookstore to look for Filipino history, there
Mhm.
was none. And this is when I was in college, in the 70s and 80s. And look, I mean, now it's still hard, but at least there's some books out there that people like yourself, younger people, can turn to and say, here is something that'll tell us. I mean, there are things that you can research. Like if you wanted to know um, about Filipino nurses. There's a lot of stuff on Filipino nurses
Yes.
now, but Professor Sinisa Choi has a book on Filipino nurses. I bet you there's a lot of nurses in Cerritos, right?
There's a lot of nurses in Cerritos. Yep.
Are you doing anything at FANHS LA about the nurses? About, maybe.
So, yeah, actually, we met last week to plan out some stuff that we could do for this year. And one of our ideas, we're actually interviewing some of the frontliners, the nurses that are working right now. So if any of our friends or family that are working, we're going to reach out to them, have them record a little video and just make a little, maybe like 2 to 3 minute video of their experiences working during this time.
Isabel, you do that. We'll promote that on I mean, I have been doing these pop-ups now since I think since last summer, the end of last summer. And I always say, hey, tell me your story, show me your pictures, let's talk about it. We'll tell stories here. And I interviewed a nurse for one of the other publications I write for, and you can get it on amok.com. And I've done podcasts, but we need some stuff in the museum that and if you do something, we will we will make sure that story is told or your
Mhm.
work is promoted because what the frontliners have done, the nurses, I mean, it's incredible. In New York, we know that more of them are dying, out of proportion to their ranks among nurses,
Mhm.
nationwide. Um, and we know that California is a new hotspot. So we know that, in the state where there are more Filipinos, they're suffering. So
Mhm.
let us know how we
Yeah.
can help, and maybe we can collaborate. But now
Mhm.
you are 20. Tell me how young people, young Filipinos are surviving the pandemic. What are you guys going through?
So right now, it's just been a lot of Zoom classes and just online platforms and discussions. We're not really allowed to have that face-to-face interaction, which is a little bit hard with making friends and meeting new people. But the teachers and professors that we have are doing a really great job in making sure we're able to try and get that type of interaction and form those types of relationships with classmates. As for like connecting with friends and family, a lot of Zoom calls, phone calls, FaceTimes, and just trying to check in with one another like every once in a while.
Yeah. And how weird is it? I mean, are you thinking about, God, this is happening now? How does it compare with what was happening a year ago or 2 years ago? And how are you dealing with that?
It's very, it's still confusing to me because from being on campus all day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to now staying at home, sitting at a desk like all day. Classes are a little bit, well, I'm not on campus anymore. So I do have a little bit more freedom in what I'm able to do. But I just miss that feeling of being somewhere else than home and seeing people, talking to people, running into people. It's just so crazy that just thinking about how life was before the pandemic to now, it's weird to think about how it's going to be like after, like when we do go back in person and when we are able to be in person. It's just going to be a weird feeling.
Yeah. What is it? How has it changed your relationships? Has it, I mean, do you see your Lola and Lola? Did you have a traditional Christmas and Thanksgiving, or did you guys Zoom?
So we usually do a, what's it called? A Christmas birthday celebration with my mom's side of the family. But there's been like a few COVID scares, like someone that they knew had COVID and they didn't want us to be exposed to it. So we had to cancel that and we just Zoomed, FaceTimed each other. But with my dad's side of the family, we all got tested and we made sure it was negative and we were able to meet. But even that, you know, you just have to go through so much to make sure that everyone's safe and we're able to see each other.
Wow. So you tested on your dad's side.
Mm-hmm.
So because
Yes.
I was the doctor. So you tested his side, and then when you got together, did you 6 bit?
Yes. So even though we got tested, we still wore our mask. We still, we didn't like entirely stay 6 feet apart, but we try not to stay all clumped together. So we did stay socially distanced in a way. But a lot of my family members on my dad's side of the family are nurses, like my aunts, my uncle, my mom. So we had to make sure we were being extra careful just because of that.
Isabel, I hope you took pictures because that is that's a historical artifact,
It
and
is
all your
all of us
friends,
wearing our masks.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
all your friends should know that everything you do and think and see and touch and take pictures of, that's going to be when we look back 20 years and say, boy, America went through a really, really terrible time with 500,000 deaths. 500,000
Mm-hmm.
deaths in February. That's more than any war in World War II. Uh, what did the Filipino Americans do? And then you'll say, well, here it is, my Facebook memories, or here it is in my phone, right? You'll say,
Mm-hmm.
here's the artifacts, and we'll put it all in the museum. And then, like I said, 20 years from now, in 2030, 2040, when we're remembering, who knows how many more deaths will occur. But when
Mm-hmm.
we're remembering 2020, 2021, and ooh, let's hope it doesn't last longer. But when we remember this period, right,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to go back to these things and they're going to be worth studying and remembering
Mm-hmm.
how how we lived. How about your friendships? Have your friendships suffered because, you know, and how you do things socially?
Mm-hmm. So we have definitely stayed in touch more through text, like texting one another and So TikTok is another big thing that came up for me during this pandemic. We'd send each other videos that remind each other of them. We FaceTime and Zoom once in a while, but it's just so different because we're not able to go out to eat. We're not able to go out and get boba. Like the most I do is go to their house, drop off a present, say happy birthday, and then talk to them later. But it's just so different. We can't be with each other.
Yeah. Do you feel, well, that's got to have a sense of loss.
Mm-hmm.
Are some of your friends like angry to the point, I'm going to do it no matter what? I'm going to see my friends. I'm going to be out there in the world. Are there, what is the split between people who are like that and people who are more like me and say, I'm going to go in the closet and talk to people on Zoom next to my gong?
Mm-hmm. My
What
friends have been really good and responsible about staying in and making sure that they're safe. So again, that's where it is with all the Zoom calls and talking to each other, like just like every once in a while. But with school coming up too, it seems like the teachers are giving us more work, so we've just been more busy. But we do try to catch up with each other once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, because there really is a kind of a sense of loss of freedom in a way. And for some that those are fighting words. I'm gonna, hell with this mask.
Mm-hmm.
And some people say, oh, everyone's dying. We've got to like hunker down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's ironic. There's some people who will find this lockdown and find a way to be free in other ways. And some people, and there's some people who will see this lockdown and they'll just feel locked down and they'll just, you know, mental health is an issue that comes up, that people are bothered. Have you seen or heard of many people in your circle who are, say, impacted in terms of their mental wellness?
I don't think anyone specifically that has told me about it, but I'm sure some of my friends are probably just not feeling the same as how they used to be when we were in person able to see each other. Because there is that sense of loneliness of, you're staring at a screen all day, and although you're talking to people, it's not the same as being with them and feeling their energy. Because, sometimes you can get that energy off of other people and just feel more positive. So it's definitely different. And I'm hoping that for any of my friends that are watching, if you are going through that, we can definitely talk it out and try and find ways for us to be more happy during this. But I hope you guys are doing well and we can talk about it soon.
Yeah, that really is a thing. The mental health aspect of this whole pandemic, and they say that suicidal ideation, not even before suicide, is the thinking
Mm-hmm.
of it is up because people are depressed, and it's not really like a mental illness kind of depression, but more like a wellness kind of depression. Like, we're not as well, you know, because of the situation. And it's something that could be helped by, like what you said, talking out. And maybe that's something for that Filipinos can help each other, Filipino
Mm-hmm.
Americans, whether you're um, in mental health or not. One of the things that we have as a community historically is we don't like to talk about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
maybe it's something we should. But the other thing that I think links this issue with Filipino Americans historically is Filipino Americans have often been alone, you know. So you
Mm-hmm.
think about, you know, Carlos Bulasan, the life of the migrant, going from town to town, being alone. You think about most of the Filipino men coming over here living in bachelor societies, no Filipino women, right? Because of anti-miscegenation laws, because they didn't bring Filipino women,
Mm-hmm.
mostly. They weren't allowed to America. So loneliness, you said the word, Isabel, loneliness is something that's big. And what did we do back in the 20s and 30s? What did we do in the 50s and 60s when Filipinos were few in America? We looked at other Filipinos and said, "Oh, tito, tita, uncle." We were instant families, right? Do you see people doing that now? I guess it's harder because we can't get
It is
together.
hard because, like at those situations, you can just walk, run into someone, and make them your friend. Talk to them, get that connection. But through Zoom, you can't do that. Like, there's not a lot of opportunities. Like when you're in class, you can't interrupt the professor. You can probably just send a message and say hi, like let's study together. But other than that, you aren't building that bond, like that strong bond right from the start. There's just
Yeah.
not a lot of opportunities for it.
So, I used to be an adjunct professor in journalism at San Francisco State and some other colleges, but does it hurt you that your experience as a student is like this, and do you feel like, oh, I'm feeling kind of cheated here? What are your thoughts as a young Filipino American student?
I think my learning experience has just changed so much. Like, I'm entering my last year of college next year. So I'm hoping by that time it gets better. Who knows? But there's definitely stuff that happens in the classroom physically that I'm not experiencing right now. Like getting that close relationship with my classmate next to me, my professor, seeing them talk and do everything. So that's a big thing that's different. And also, it seems like they're giving us a lot more homework now than they do before, maybe because they think we have more free time and they're not able to cover it
Yeah,
online.
I'll
But it's
tell
just,
you.
the
Yeah,
experience is different.
I'll tell you, they probably do that to. I don't want to speak ill of my former colleagues, but they probably think, well, I'm not going to get them in class. They're not going to be with us. They're not going to see anything. They're going to have to learn on their own. And so here's
Mhm.
a bunch of stuff. Do that, and it's up to you. It's almost like it's up to you to learn what you want to learn or what you can learn. It's almost unfair because part of the learning experience is these kind of exchanges with the professor. And although
Mhm.
I swear I had office hours and no one ever came to my office hours. I think that's a pattern, or maybe it was just me. I don't know. But I feel for it. Do you want to say where you're in your senior year? Do you want to say or
Yeah, so I'm at Cal State Long Beach right now. I'm in my third year studying business management, human resources management with a minor in healthcare administration. So a lot of
right?
my classes right now are upper division with about 30 students. So I'm able to see familiar faces now that it's more specific classes. But again, like establishing that connection is hard, but I've been able to make a few friends.
Yeah, you mentioned your course of study, and I know it's geared toward a career, but there's a lot of people who would hear what you just said and said, why not any Filipino American studies? Why not any Asian American studies? Why not any, they'll say that and you say, well, look, I got to take this course load, these requirements. I don't have room. Like my sometimes cohort Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez would say, oh, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State. So, oh, he would say, well, here's a Filipino American studies courses you could take. Did you consider taking Filipino American studies courses,
Mhm.
or what
Yes.
did what
So
what, do you think?
next year, I actually have a lot more freedom and flexibility in my schedule. So since my classes, or since my school does offer like Filipino classes and Asian American classes, I'm definitely going to take one both semesters because I have space for like one more class for both. So I'm looking forward to taking those classes.
That's great. That's great. So you'll know enough to be able to tell further your Filipino American story. And that's great because one of the things that I liked about the fact that you're with us, like I said earlier, I mean, you're one of the few people I talk to who isn't eligible for Medicare, and that's a great thing because the young people, like after seeing Amanda Gorman give her give her poet her poem, or read her poem, recite her poem, that really is where we should be heading. Where we should be, with youth together, going forward to the future. And the future is much brighter. We have people like you taking leadership roles in these organizations focused on Filipino American history. So I just I think it's great that you were willing to sit around and talk to a guy like me about Filipino American history. Tell me, is there something that you were yearning to say that, oh God, he didn't ask me about that, and I practiced. I was going to tell him all about what I know about the Civil Rights Act, or is there anything that you wanted to say?
I think
No.
we covered everything, a lot of things actually. Um, but I guess just more of a PSA. My mom is actually a nurse working in the COVID floor. So whoever's watching, make sure you wear your mask, you stay safe, social distance, and if you're able to get the vaccine, you should, just to do your part in making sure that the rest of the world is able to get better and get back to normal.
What do you think about that? What do you think about Filipino Americans who might be a little anti-vax, or a little hesitant? Are they right?
Um, well, they've done their research. Do your research, and if you think you're able to get it, then go ahead. But eventually, we're all gonna have to get it in order for all of us to get better. But right now, because of how bad everything is, that seems to be one of our only options, is to making sure we can get back to normal soon. My mom got it, I think, last week, and she said it went fine. So we just all have to make sure we're doing our part. If you're not able to get the vaccine right now, just stay safe and wear your mask.
Yeah, and they're saying the cloth mask. You really need an N95, right? Not a
Yes.
KN95, but maybe an
Mm-hmm.
N95, right?
Yeah. Just whatever. Yeah, the N95 does a really good job at making sure your germs are in there and you're protected from outside germs.
See, one of the things that I do when I theater, when I do speaking in public, I'm out there. I'm without knowing, I'm expectorating all these you know
The
things. I mean,
particles into the air.
right. I'm not spitting, not intentionally, but I am. That like sometimes, you'll talk to someone and they'll talk and they'll give you a little bit of their lunch in your eyes. Oh yeah, you try to be polite, but now that was like 2 years ago. Now
Mhm.
we're socially distanced. We're not going
Through
to
a
do
computer
that.
screen.
Got a computer, got this, yeah, this thing here. We need this. This is important.
Mhm.
So, and maybe we will talk to your mom about what she's experiencing, because the nurses, I mean, right here where the museum is in San Joaquin County, can't even get, even if you're eligible in the first tier A and B, it's
Mhm.
hard to get vaccines. In the county just below us, Stanislaus County, they've shut down the vaccination centers. So I hope they get their act together soon,
Mhm.
and we need to just pay attention to our fellow Filipino Americans, see how they're doing, because that's history. How are
Mhm.
we dealing with this history? Um, that's important. And then how, and not just how we're dealing with it to try to make it better, but how are we living through it? Like you're talking about making lumpia with your mom. I guess you're spending
Yep.
more family time, huh?
Lots of family time.
Too much, too much family time.
Sometimes a little bit too much. I have two younger sisters, and just being in a house with them all day, every single day, is a little too much. But when we're at our desk, that's like our little space, our personal space.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just think that it's great to have your perspective on all of these matters, and I'm glad that I was able to tell you how many fingers Larry Itliong has, and some other little trivial things that you can bring up and say, hey, you know, tell me how many fingers Larry Itliong have for a beer or whatever. Well, of course, you wouldn't be drinking beer for a hollow hollow for the price of a hollow hollow.
For the hello hello.
Oh, so anyway, Isabelle, I hope that people see a young person like you and say, "Yeah, I want to join the museum. I want to join. I want to go to the museum. I want to join FANHS. I want to know more about Filipino American history." I hope they do that.
I hope so too. I hope all the youth are somehow able to go to the museum eventually and look at all these resources and artifacts and whatever you have over there just to learn more.
Yeah. And really, so Isabel, thank you again. I've kept you on long enough. And, but if I don't keep you on this long again, I hope you will come back again soon, just to give me the youth perspective, right? The youth, I mean, most of the people you who are your age and who are dealing with this, are they depressed? Are they bummed out about what's happening?
Yeah, we've all come to the point where we're so bummed out that we're not able to be in person in school with our friends. So it's just that point where we're tired, we're done, we want to go back soon. So we're hoping we can go back this fall, hopefully.
This fall,
Yeah,
not
our
this,
school's already preparing for fall 2021 to be in person. So we'll see how that turns out.
really, and that's your senior year,
Mhm.
right?
That's the start of my senior year.
Yeah. So well, let's
Mhm.
hope. Let's hope by this. Let's hope by the fall. But we still have a lot of bad stuff to get through in February and
Yeah.
March and April.
Mhm.
But maybe we turn the corner.
Maybe. Maybe
Maybe.
we'll see. We'll see how
Yeah.
it goes.
All right.
Mhm.
All right. Isabel, really, thank you again. Please stay in touch. Let's talk more. Um, I thank Dr. Ron Bonaventura for our FANHS museum trustee for connecting us, because we will tap into you. You are now an honorary member of at least the pop-up, the
Mhm.
pop-up, the unofficial pop-up board. When I say, what are young people thinking? Let's call up Isabel, so you'll know, right? You,
Mhm.
you know how to do this. You'll say, oh yeah, let's call up, and don't call me Tito. Just don't call me Uncle either. I'm just Emil. You say, let's call up
Mhm.
Emil and tell him what the young people think. So anyway, what is that thing on your wall, by the way?
This is my dad's stuff here. He collects a few art pieces. So we have a Supreme skateboard, and then this is a Murakami art piece. don't really know what it is, but we have a
Oh,
few of these
okay.
things around the house.
I
Yeah.
thought, oh, this is the eclectic Isabel. Oh, so you got a skateboard
Mhm.
there. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, and I
Hi.
got my signed Benny Agbayani jersey. So you know when you leave, you'll have to Google home runs of famous home runs of Benny Agbayani, and then you say, well, you know, Hank Aaron died yesterday, but Benny Agbayani, he was our Filipino American. He's from
Mhm.
Hawaii, Filipino American home run hitter. All right, all right,
All right. Thank
Isabel,
you
thank
so
you
much
very
for
much.
having me. It was so fun talking with you, and I'll talk with you soon.
All right, thank you, Isabel, and that's
Bye.
Isabel, and she's going away, and I appreciate her being here with us, because that's what we need. We need people like Isabelle David uh, on. She's vice president of the FANHS chapter, not the kids FANHS, the big FANHS of LA. We need that young blood. She's only 20, and we need people like that in the at the museum, because you know this is not the Medicare club. It's it's the all Filipino American club. Well, it's not really a club. It's an historical society, Emil. Yes, I know it's an historical society, but we don't want to go the route of those, you know, entities that don't have enough young people. We need the young. We need the youth. That was the message at the inaugural when Amanda Gorman gave that energetic, full of life and hope, right? And courage. There is light. We can be the light if we have the courage to be it, right? So, once again, if you missed, we had Daniel Phil Gonzalez talk about the inaugural on Thursday, and it's on our FANHS Facebook page. Me and Dan talking about the inaugural, talking about a bunch of stuff. I wanted this to be a day that we talked to the young people, and we did. and we'll have Isabelle back again. Just another reminder that we also had the Fermin Tabera anniversary, the 91st year, January 22nd. That's when he was gunned down. And it's funny. I was reading an editorial by Tony Nunez in the Pajaronian. It's the newspaper down there, the pajaronian.com. And last year in 2020, he said it was time to honor, right? This is a young newspaper editor there saying he didn't see anything about it in Watsonville growing up in school not because of that editorial, but because of the push by young Filipino Americans in Watsonville. Now the library has a big program. They talk about Fermin Tobera. They don't forget who Fermin Tobera was. And really, ask anyone. You walk down the street, see how many times people know Fermin Tobera and his name, because of all the rioters, or all the transgressions against Filipinos, the violent transgressions in the 30s, and the riots that took place, the 5-day riots in Watsonville, and the riots that took place up and down California and throughout the nation, we remember Fermin Tobera. He is like a symbol to Filipino Americans, and because he was just, I believe he was just 22 years old, right? He was just a little older than our guest Isabelle, and he was out for a good time. He was dancing at a dance hall, white taxi dancers. The white mob knew he was just with a bunch of, a group of Filipinos. They went to the ranch house. They shot up the ranch house. Everyone else, many people in the bunkhouse, well, they all survived except Tabera. They shot up the bunkhouse and Tabera got the bullet to the heart. That's history. And now you ask people about the Watsonville riots of 1930s, the 5-day riots, and people, Watsonville? Older Filipinos who've been exposed to the story know. But I put it in the on our Facebook page. Hey, let's not forget January 22nd, 1930. And it's just one of those times that we'll remember it all year. But they finally, after in the 90th year last year, they honored, well, they're still honoring Tobera, but the city apologized for what happened. I mean, back then, no one would have thought of apologizing, right? Even the politicians were anti-Filipino. And it was a situation, what I call Filipino phobia. In my show, Emil Amok, my one-man show, I talk about Filipino phobia being real and no one knows it. Well, Islamophobia, Emil? No, this was Filipino phobia. They thought Filipinos were the downfall of the American culture. They thought the Filipinos were going to make the white race impure. 1930s. It brought on the exclusion, 1934, right along with the Tidings-McDuffie Act. So bits of American history. Like I said, just a handful of things you need to know to understand what happened to us and why life played out the way it did. Discrimination, racism, it happens, it repeats, it recycles. Native Americans, African Americans, Latino Americans, Filipino Americans, Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans. We all go through it. It's a kind of a xenophobic other pattern. And We got it big time in the 20s and 30s, moderately so later. But it's the reason why new Filipino Americans who have come subsequent to 65, subsequent to 1970, subsequent to 2000, 2010, 2020 need to know the history. So that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Really, we do this because the museum is closed, and I just like to open up the doors and say, here we are. We're still here. We are still here, and I mean, to our credit, right? We're still here, and I want to thank you. I thank you for that. Thank you for supporting us on our little pop-ups. Like I said, the museum is all volunteer, every position, and maybe that's why we manage with your donations to make a little extra. You know, after paying all our bills, and we still pay our bills, we still have to keep the museum open. And we've managed. And now we're going to come on, we're coming up to the anniversary. I mean, we've been closed since March 30th because the official lockdown word came down on March 15th or so. But it was March 30th when we decided, oh, we're locked down. Maybe it was slightly before, maybe a week before. But you know, we've had to shut down, but we still, through programs like this, tell our history. So anyway, you get in touch with me at emilamok@gmail.com. That's EMILAMOK@gmail.com. You can watch this replay right here on the Facebook Live, the Facebook FANHS Museum, at FANHS Museum on Facebook. You can also see it on Emil Guillermo Media, also on amok.com, amok.com. We're going to do something else tomorrow, a little shorter tomorrow because there is a trustees meeting, hopefully a short trustees meeting. But that's it. So thank you again for joining us. Have yourselves a great rest of the day. Join me again tomorrow. We'll have something new, and we'll go in the chat box and get your questions. Although you know, should I go in the chat box now and see? No, tomorrow. Come back. We'll get your questions tomorrow. Emil Guillermo here. Emil, luck to you. Saying, I like my my friend, the late and limited Professor Dawn Boholano Mabalan, might have said. She did. I have emails to prove it. She said, Mahals and Salamat.